My name is Angelica, and I have always believed that family comes first. I grew up in a modest home with my parents and my older sister, Georgia. Georgia was always the star of the family. She was prettier, more popular, and somehow always got what she wanted. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, but sometimes living in her shadow was tough. I've been working as a marketing analyst for 5 years, putting in long hours, staying late, and taking on extra projects. Last Tuesday, my boss, Mr. Tesoro, called me into his office. "Angelica, have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I sat down, trying to hide my nervousness. "I've been watching your work over the past year, and I have to say, I'm impressed." I shifted in my seat anxiously, waiting for the "but" that usually followed such words. "We're opening a new branch in Colorado, and I want you to head the marketing department. It comes with a significant salary increase and, of course, covers relocation expenses. Think it over and let me know by the end of the week." I spent the rest of the day in a slight daze. This was it, my chance to step out of George's shadow, to prove that I could forge my own path. I couldn't wait to tell my family. That evening, nearly bursting into my parents' house for our weekly family dinner, I felt my heart race. Georgia wasn't there yet. She was married now to David, a successful accountant, and they lived on the other side of town. "You look happy," Mom said, stirring the spaghetti sauce. "I have amazing news." "Wait until everyone's here," she smiled. When Georgia and David arrived, we all sat down at the table. Dad poured the wine, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. "I got a promotion. They want me to head the marketing department in Colorado." Mom froze, a flicker of worry in her eyes. "In Colorado," she repeated. "But that's so far." "I know, but it's an incredible opportunity. The salary is almost twice what I make now." Mom set down her fork. "Angelica, now is not the time for you to leave." "What do you mean?" I noticed her glance quickly at Georgia, who suddenly lowered her eyes to her plate. "Georgia has been struggling since Leon was born," Mom said. I froze. Leon was only 2 months old, and while my sister had looked tired, I hadn't realized it was this serious. "The doctor diagnosed her with postpartum depression," Dad added quietly. I looked at Georgia. Her eyes were shining, and she quickly dabbed them with a napkin. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't want to worry anyone, but it's been really hard." Mom squeezed her hand. "She needs family support. David works late, and they can't afford a full-time nanny. We were thinking," Dad continued, "that it would be best if they moved in here for a while, until Georgia gets better." I felt my dreams slipping away. "But the promotion." "There will be other promotions," Mom said firmly. "Family comes first, Angelica." I looked at my family's faces, Mom's determination, Dad's apologetic gaze, George's downcast eyes. And I thought about little Leon, who needed his family. "You're right, Mom. Family comes first. I'll tell Mr. Tesoro I can't take the position." The relief on Mom's face was immediate. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly. Georgia squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." A week later, Georgia, David, and baby Leon moved into our parents' house. I stayed at my current job but managed to negotiate a small raise. It wasn't Colorado, but it was something. I also started setting aside $2,000 from my monthly salary to help Georgia with medical bills and baby expenses. My daily routine had changed drastically. I worked all day, then came home for a quick dinner before taking over caring for Leon. While my parents cooked dinner and Georgia rested, I rocked the baby, changed his diapers, bathed him, and put him to bed. By the time I crawled into my own bed, I was completely exhausted. But it was only temporary, I kept telling myself. Georgia would get better, and life would go back to normal. I would be able to focus on my career again. Right now, family came first. Wilson and I stuck together despite everything. But weeks turned into months, and then a whole year passed. My life became an endless cycle of the same routine: work, home, childcare, a few hours of sleep, then repeat. I was drained, but I kept telling myself it was worth it for the sake of my family. Every morning, I rushed out of the house while Georgia was still too tired to get out of bed with Leon. Every evening, I came home to find her on the couch, pale, wrapped in a blanket, her gaze empty. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart?" Mom would gently ask, leaning toward her. "Everything's so hazy," Georgia would snap. "The medication makes me feel like a zombie." I would take Leon from Mom's arms, warm up his bottle, and persuade my parents to eat dinner before it got cold. Leon turned 1, and taking care of him became more challenging by the day. I loved my nephew dearly, but I couldn't deny that I had become his primary caregiver while his mother was still recovering. And honestly, over time, I started noticing inconsistencies. One day, I came home early and found George's handbag filled with receipts from the mall. Or, despite constantly complaining about exhaustion and being unable to get out of bed, she somehow always had a flawless hairstyle, a perfect manicure, and new clothes. "Didn't you say Georgia couldn't leave the house yesterday because of anxiety?" I asked Mom one evening after finding a receipt for lunch at an expensive restaurant. "The doctor says it's good for her to go out sometimes. It's part of her treatment plan." Mom waved it off dismissively. I nodded, but something felt off. A few days later, I saw Georgia with her friends at a cafe near my office. She was laughing, gesturing animatedly, nothing like the frail woman at home who could barely get off the couch. And then came the day everything changed. I woke up with a splitting headache that wouldn't go away, even after taking a painkiller. By noon, my vision was blurry, and my boss insisted I go home to rest. I didn't bother notifying my family that I'd be coming home early. When I pulled up to the house, the first thing I noticed was that George's favorite shoes weren't by the door. She always kicked them off there. Strange, considering she had complained that morning about being too weak to even get dressed. I entered quietly, planning to go straight to my room and lie down, but then I heard loud laughter coming from the kitchen. It was George's laugh. Not a polite chuckle, not a tired smile, but her real, full-bodied laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in months. And then, between giggles, she said, "Maura ordered another round of mimosas," and we completely lost track of time. The waiter even had to remind us they were closing for the afternoon. I froze in the hallway, momentarily forgetting my headache. What I had just heard didn't match the image of someone suffering from debilitating depression. I pushed open the kitchen door. Georgia was sitting at the table with Mom. They were both smiling, drinking coffee, and eating the last of Dad's birthday cake. They seemed to be enjoying the moment, until Georgia saw me. Something like fear flickered in her eyes, her smile vanished instantly, her shoulders slumped, and she quickly reached for a napkin. "Angelica," she said in that fragile voice I had grown used to. "I wasn't expecting you back so soon." I didn't look away. "I have a migraine," I said, watching every change in her expression. I couldn't focus at work. Mom immediately jumped up. "Oh, sweetheart, let me get you some tea and an ice pack." "No need," I waved her off, still not taking my eyes off Georgia. "What were you two laughing about?" It sounded funny. Mom and Georgia exchanged quick glances. "Oh, just a silly commercial on TV," Mom answered hastily. I tilted my head as if considering. I thought I heard something about mimosas and a waiter. Georgia quickly dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "Just an old story, you know. From before Leon. Sometimes Mom makes me talk about happier times. Dr. Harrison says it helps." That night, After putting Leon to bed, I ran into Mom in the kitchen. Dad was watching TV, and Georgia was taking one of her long, therapeutic baths. "Mom," I began as she wiped a plate dry, "is Georgia really still suffering from postpartum depression? It's been a year, and sometimes she seems fine." Mom tensed. "Of course, she's sick. Why are you asking?" "I heard her laughing today, talking about going out with her friends." "That doesn't sound like someone with severe depression." Mom shot me an angry look. "Mood swings are part of her condition. Some days are better than others. Don't judge what you don't understand." I swallowed hard. "I'm not judging. I just want to make sure we're actually helping her, not enabling her." "Your sister is sick," Mom's voice was firm. "She's in treatment. It's not your place to question her illness." I backed off, but I barely slept that night. I grabbed my laptop and started researching postpartum depression, reading article after article, studying the symptoms, treatment, and recovery timelines. Yes, mood swings were mentioned, but overall, the picture looked different. Women with PPD typically struggle to care for their children, yet Georgia had no problem simply handing Leon over to me and disappearing. They often neglected themselves, but Georgia always had perfectly styled hair, a fresh manicure, and new clothes. Most sources stated that with proper treatment, improvement usually came within a few months. A year had passed, and not only did Georgia seem to be getting no better, she didn't even show signs of illness when she thought no one was watching. The next morning, I tried talking to Mom again. "I'm just concerned," I said cautiously, showing her the articles on my phone. "These symptoms don't quite match what we're seeing with Georgia." Mom snatched the phone from my hand, her eyes flashing with anger. "What's wrong with you?" "I spoke to Dr. Harrison yesterday, and he said Georgia's case is particularly difficult. Her recovery doesn't follow some internet checklist." I pressed my lips together and nodded, but I didn't stop watching. Over the next few weeks, I paid closer attention to my sister's behavior. I noticed how her mood shifted the moment she thought no one was looking. How she lit up when she got a text but quickly hid her phone whenever I walked into the room. How her bad days always seemed to coincide with times when she was expected to handle some family responsibility. Something wasn't right. And I was determined to find out what. This time, work brought good news. Mr. Tesoro called me into his office again. "Angelica," he began, "I know you couldn't take the position in Colorado last year, but I want you to know, your dedication hasn't gone unnoticed." I froze. "We're promoting you to senior marketing analyst," he continued. "It comes with a 15% salary increase." I nearly cried from relief. After everything that had happened, something good was finally happening. "Thank you so much, Mr. Tesoro," I breathed. "This means a lot to me." That evening, I decided not to tell my family. Something told me they would find a way to take most of that extra money, for George's treatment or some other emergency. So I kept quiet and continued giving them the same $2,000 a month that I had been contributing all this time. The rest, I transferred straight to my savings account. By this point, I was completely burned out. Working full-time, then coming home to be essentially Leon's nanny, had drained every ounce of energy from me. I hadn't taken a vacation in over a year. No days off, no time for myself. I needed a break. "I'm thinking about taking a vacation," I announced over dinner one evening. Mom looked up from Leon's plate. "A vacation? That sounds expensive." "I've been saving, and there's a great deal right now. I need some time to rest." "I think it's a great idea," Dad unexpectedly supported me. "Everyone needs a break sometimes." "You should definitely go, Angelica," Georgia nodded. "You've helped so much with Leon. You deserve it." Their easy agreement made me suspicious, but I was too excited about the idea of a trip. The second week of May, just a month away. For the first time in a long while, I had something to look forward to. Over the next few weeks, I frequently mentioned my trip. Partly because I wanted to share my excitement, and partly to make sure everyone remembered I was leaving. I even marked the date on the family calendar in the kitchen and arranged for an extra day off at work in advance. The day before my departure, I came home and froze in the doorway. Suitcases stood in the living room, and Georgia and David sat side by side on the couch, looking tense. "What's going on?" I asked, feeling a sinking sensation in my stomach. David glanced at Georgia, then shifted his gaze to me. "Georgia's doctor believes she needs specialized treatment. There's a facility in Malibu that offers an intensive program for treatment-resistant postpartum depression," Georgia added. I blinked. "In Malibu," I repeated. "We're leaving tomorrow morning," Georgia said calmly. A cold feeling spread through me. "Tomorrow morning?" "It's just for a week," David quickly added, but I already knew where this was going. "We know it overlaps with your vacation." Mom entered the living room, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. "It's unfortunate timing, but Dr. Harrison says Georgia can't wait any longer." I clenched my fists. "And who's going to take care of Leon?" Silence. But I knew the answer before anyone said it. "We were hoping you could postpone your trip," Dad said. "Just for a few weeks." I felt anger rising inside me, slow and seething. "My flight is tomorrow. I'll lose my hotel deposit. My ticket money." George's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Angelica. I didn't plan this, but Dr. Harrison says this program might finally help me get better." I looked at their faces. Georgia, crying just as strategically as always. Mom, watching me expectantly, as if testing whether I would argue. Dad, avoiding my gaze. David, looking uncomfortable and guilty. Something inside me broke. "Fine," I said stiffly. "I'll cancel my trip." Later that evening, after making all the necessary calls to cancel my vacation and losing nearly $800 in non-refundable deposits, I sat on my bed and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time: pure, unfiltered rage. It was too convenient. Too perfectly timed to ruin my plans. The next morning, Georgia and David left for their treatment program in Malibu. Mom and Dad went about their business too. Dad to play golf, Mom to her book club. I was left alone with Leon. As usual. After putting him to bed, I stood in the hallway, staring at Georgia and David's bedroom door. I had never snooped through her things before, but now, I needed to know the truth. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. I started with the dresser drawers, nothing unusual. The closet was full of new clothes with tags still attached, which already seemed odd for someone who claimed she could barely find the energy to shower. Then I checked the nightstand. No prescription bottles. No doctor's notes. No therapy worksheets. Nothing to suggest Georgia had ever been receiving treatment at all. That's when I noticed her laptop. It was sitting on the desk, open and unlocked. I hesitated for only a moment before sitting down and looking at the screen. Her email and social media accounts were open in multiple tabs. I clicked on her Facebook messages and found a long conversation with Maura. The same Maura Georgia had mentioned when I overheard her talking that day. My hands trembled as I scrolled through weeks of messages. "Georgia, I'm so sick of pretending. But damn, it's working." Maura, "Does Angelica suspect anything?" Georgia, "No. She's such a naive idiot. Doesn't notice a thing. Just hands over money and babysits for free. It's almost too easy." My throat went dry. I kept reading. "Georgia, I think we can stretch this out for at least another year. Then I'll recover, go back to work, and put Leon in daycare. By that time, Angelica won't be as useful anyway. Mora, what about your parents? Are they still on board? Georgia, of course. They'll tell Angelica I'm cured whenever we decide it's time. They love having their favorite daughter and grandson living with them, and Angelica's money helps everyone. It's the perfect setup. Mora, you're a mastermind, girl. But don't you feel guilty for using your sister? Georgia, why should I? She's always been jealous of me. Besides, she can afford it, and we've saved so much on childcare this year. I leaned back, ice-cold numbness washing over me. It had all been a lie. Every tearful episode. Every bad day. Every excuse. For an entire year, Georgia had faked depression while I worked myself to exhaustion, cared for her child, and handed over my money. And my parents knew. My phone buzzed. Mom, can you make dinner by 6? We're bringing home Chinese for ourselves, but we forgot to ask what you wanted. They hadn't even bought me food. It was such a small thing, but somehow, it made everything click into place. I quickly snapped a photo of George's messages as evidence, then carefully closed the laptop, leaving it exactly as I had found it. For the next few days, I pretended everything was fine while secretly making plans to leave. I called my friend Baze, who had been begging me for months to get away from my family. I need a place to stay while I look for an apartment. Just for a few weeks. Stay as long as you need, Baze said without hesitation. I've got your back. I waited until the day Georgia and David were supposed to return from their so-called treatment program in Malibu, which was most likely just a luxury vacation. I had seen their social media posts, the ones they thought were hidden from me. Poolside drinks. Spa treatments. Strolling along the beach. That evening, while my parents sat downstairs watching TV with Leon, I started packing my suitcases. When I walked down the stairs with them in hand, the looks on their faces were priceless. Angelica, Mom jumped up from the couch. What's going on? I'm leaving, I said calmly. Dad frowned. What do you mean, you're leaving? You can't just go now. Georgia isn't even home. Georgia isn't home because she's on vacation in Malibu, not getting treatment for an illness she doesn't have. My parents exchanged panicked glances. Angelica, you're talking nonsense, Mom's voice trembled. Georgia is very sick. She's in a specialized treatment facility. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots of her conversation with Mora. She's been faking it for a year. And you both knew. Mom went pale. Dad started stammering something about a misunderstanding. You all use me, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. You took my money. You took my time. You made me give up my promotion and cancel my vacation. You used me as a free nanny and an ATM. Angelica, this is all just a misunderstanding, Dad tried to cut in. We only wanted to help Georgia. No, I interrupted. You helped Georgia at my expense. You've always favored her, but this goes beyond favoritism. This is fraud. Mom's demeanor instantly shifted. Her voice hardened. You're being ridiculous. We're family. We help each other. Help each other? I let out a bitter laugh. Has anyone here ever helped me? I looked directly at them and, before they could say another word, I continued. I did the math on exactly how much you took from me. $24,000 from my salary over the past year. Plus around $12,000 if I had been paid for taking care of Leon like a nanny. You owe me $36,000. Dad shot up from his seat, his face turning to stone. Now you're being ridiculous. We don't owe you anything. This is what family does. I looked at him coldly. No, Dad. Family doesn't lie and manipulate each other. I let the words sink in before continuing. Family doesn't fake mental illness to avoid responsibility. Mom pressed her lips together, but I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes. If you don't pay me back, I went on, I'll take you to court. You wouldn't dare. Mom gasped. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my photos. I have George's messages admitting to fraud. I tapped a few buttons, flipping the screen to show my banking records. I have proof of every transfer I made to your account. Then, I turned to another photo, a receipt from the treatment center in Malibu. I even have confirmation that the place is a luxury resort and spa. Finally, I looked at David. And I'm sure his employer would be very interested to know he was involved in this scheme. Dad's face went deathly pale. You'll destroy your sister's marriage, he hissed. You'll tear this family apart. I didn't flinch. You already tore this family apart when you decided to exploit me. I took a deep breath and said, calmly but firmly, you have 1 week to transfer the money to my account. If you don't, I'll file a lawsuit. And I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Relatives, friends, your church community, everyone. This is outrageous, Mom muttered. After everything we've done for you. I met her gaze. And what exactly have you done for me, Mom? I asked. Besides taking my money and my time? She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. I work full-time. I come home and become a parent to a child who isn't even mine, while his real mother goes shopping and drinks with her friends. I picked up my bags and headed for the door. You can't just leave. Mom shouted. I placed my hand on the doorknob but stopped when I heard her final desperate argument. What about Leon? I turned back slowly. Leon has 2 parents and 2 grandparents, I said coldly. Maybe it's time they started acting like it. Then I walked out without looking back, even as I heard Mom calling my name. Baze was waiting in her car at the curb. The moment I got in, she squeezed my hand. You okay? No, I answered honestly. But I will be. 3 days later, I signed a lease for a 1-bedroom apartment near my office. It was small but perfect. Mine. No one could use me. No one could guilt-trip me for putting myself first. When Georgia and David returned from Malibu, they blew up my phone with calls and messages. First, they were angry. Then, they apologized. Then, they begged. Georgia, please talk to us. We never meant for things to go this far. David, Angelica, we're really sorry. Let's meet and work this out. I didn't reply to either of them. A week after I left, just as I had warned, I received a bank transfer notification. $36,000 from their joint account. Georgia, we sent the money. Can we talk now? I finally responded. I got what I needed. Don't contact me again. Then I blocked their numbers, emails, and social media accounts. I did the same for my parents when they tried to reach out. It's been 6 months since I left. Sometimes, I miss them. Or rather, I miss the people I thought they were. I miss the idea of a family where people genuinely care for each other. But I don't miss being used, taken for granted. I still work at the same company, but there are rumors that a new branch will be opening in Austin next year. I've already told Mr. Tesoro I'm interested. The farther I can get from this town and the memories it holds, the better. Some nights, I lie awake and wonder, will I ever be able to forgive them? Not for their sake, but for mine. The anger and betrayal still pulse inside me, making it hard to trust new people. But I'm working on it. I'm saving for a down payment on my own home. If everything goes according to plan, I'll have enough in 2 years. Baze thinks I should try therapy. Maybe she's right. Not everyone is like my family. Not everyone will take advantage of me if I let them get close. The other day, I ran into Georgia at the grocery store. I was in the produce section, picking apples, when I heard a small voice. Angelica. I froze. Turning around, I already knew who I would see. Leon was sitting in the cart, reaching for me with his little hands, his face lighting up with joy. He was almost 2 now, talking more and more. Georgia stood stiffly beside him, looking like she'd seen a ghost. For a moment, something inside me wavered. I missed that little boy. But then I remembered everything his mother had done. Everything my parents had allowed. Silently, I set down the apple in my hand, turned around, and walked away. Georgia didn't follow me. Maybe one day, I'll build my own family, a real one, built on honesty and support, not exploitation and lies. But for now, I'm focused on healing. On building the life I deserve. On remembering that I matter, too. And when the offer to transfer to Austin comes, I'll be ready. A new city. New people. New opportunities. A chance to define myself, not as Georgia's sister, not as Leon's aunt, not as a convenient babysitter or an endless source of help, but simply as Angelica. A woman who has finally learned to put herself first. Let me know what you think of this story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon.